The chosen one. They want to corner you, but the truth is coming out, and you can't see who's working behind the scenes. Whispers reverberate in darkened spaces. Plans are being developed insidiously. They want to silence, hinder, and destroy you. However, they are unaware of something. You are not a normal person. You are the chosen one. Until now, you've been the victim of phony friendships, hidden machinations, and games played behind your back. They have done everything to slander you, ruin your reputation, and even portray you as a criminal. But there is one thing they do not understand. The truth is always disclosed. Regardless of how dense the darkness is, the light always penetrates it. The more they attempt to quiet you, the higher you go. As they prepare their traps, you can see how divine justice's scheme works. They are attempting to imprison you in order to defeat or overthrow you. They don't realize, however, that you are supported by heavenly power as well as human force. The truth is protecting you. Justice is on your side. You are the one who will ruin this game as long as you stand on the right. Their illusory empires will collapse. Their ideas will end up in the same grave that they dug themselves. Truth is bound to prevail. As your reputation grows, you are the chosen one. Their plans will fail. Now, prepare to post in the comments, for the day of divine reckoning is near. A shroud of secrecy hung thick in the dimly lighted room, where hushed murmurs intermingled like tangled strands in a large, deceitful web, as a gathering of hidden figures formed complex plots, hoping their whispers would vanish into the darkness, unheard and unseen. Yet destiny had other plans. Every disguised threat, calculated ploy, every act of hate directed at an unwary individual did not fade into oblivion. An invisible watcher, a mute witness, took in every detail of the story. The enormity of the situation was clear. This was no casual conversation, no brief exchange of words. It was the countdown to the inevitable reckoning, and the moment of truth had already arrived. The alarm had been triggered, and the previously private conversation was suddenly exposed in a harsh light. What had been spoken with unshakable conviction, hidden under layers of lies, something had already seeped through the gaps. The conspirators, blinded by their own hubris, had no notion that their intentions were no longer just concepts in the shadows. A name had risen, first as a simple word, then as a repeated chant with unspoken meaning. This was neither idle conjecture or a transitory complaint. It laid the groundwork for a well-planned demise. The debate did not focus around abstract concepts. It was a meticulously prepared screenplay intended to demolish, sabotage, and destroy. Their comments intensified, and their goals hardened into something considerably more sinister. This was no longer a gathering to air frustrations. It was a wartime council. Every step was planned with the precision of a strategist determining the outcome of a conflict. Will they create an illusion that distorts vision to frame their target? Would they create such a compelling tale that friends would unintentionally become adversaries? Or will their deceptions go so far as to destroy trust? There was no hesitancy or ambiguity in their tones. They talked as if this was ordinary, as if their strategy had been well tried, developed, and proved beneficial. To them, the target was just another hurdle in a long list of defeated threats. Then came the moment of divergence. They failed to see the mistake. A name entered the debate, one that might be influenced or twisted, shaped into a pawn in their elaborate scheme. A fake truth has developed, carefully crafted, designed for maximum impact. This was no longer speculation. It had evolved into a clear act of purpose. The weight of their words sealed their doom, blinding them to the fact that the sentences they crafted would soon become shackles, binding their own collapse. They took pride in their own inventiveness while insulting the one they aimed to undermine, laughing at the misery they wanted to cause. They thought recklessness for invincibility and secrecy for security, but unseen eyes had already recorded every word. A change in the air heralded the unseen, an undetectable tremor that sent shockwaves through their distorted sense of control. The once steady tempo of discourse slowed, with delay growing between breaths. A gaze was exchanged, a sudden silence. A primitive instinct warned that something was wrong. Paranoia manifested itself as uneasy glances over shoulders and tapping of fingers on the table. Silence grew, communicating louder than words. Had they been careless? Had a castle of concealment they constructed so meticulously, yet it has already began to fall, and worry has spread among them. The initial, tacit acknowledgement of uncertainty. A person, undetected and quiet, had appeared where they should not have been. Was it a chance or a mistake of fate? Or had destiny, through its quiet orchestration, assured their presence? The weight of inadvertent discovery bore on them, and every element of the scheme became ingrained in their minds, unavoidable, unforgettable. They hadn't sought this information yet. It was foisted upon them, and now they had an unenviable choice: go away, burying the truth, letting events to play out as they will, or acting, risking all, and bringing the hidden into the light. If you are experiencing an excess of divine love in your heart, now is the moment to share it. You may help spread God's blessings by clicking the super thank you button on YouTube and donating $200 or more. This wonderful gift will affect not just your life, but also the souls of countless others. Each of you has a holy position in God's great purpose via this platform, and your giving will provide fruit for our prayers. Act now. Share your benefits to honor His kingdom. You were meant to do much bigger things in God's loving hands. May God bless you. A tempest of doubt surged inside them. If they kept quiet, the deceit would go unhindered and uncontested. If they interfered, they risked bringing the storm onto themselves. Doubt scratched at them. Will their warning be heard or ignored? Would they be depicted as agitators? An unwelcome interruption to a machine already in operation. Worst of all, if the architects of this strategy were aware of their knowledge, would they become targets? Silence was the easy way out, but it came at a cost, and that payment was the weight of another's devastation. The truth, like a load of lead, weighed heavily on their spirit. They made their choice at that time, holding their breath and building resolution. The truth is too weighty to ignore, settled in their minds like an anchor thrown into deep water. Silence was the simplest way out, feigning ignorance and allowing time to obliterate memories. Despite their efforts to drive it away, it fought its way back. The remarks said in that hidden meeting reverberate like an unstoppable rhythm. Then there was the name. The name made it tough to walk away. This wasn't a remote battle or an impersonal manipulation. This was genuine, immediate, and frighteningly near. Their thoughts struggled with the weight of it all. However, their hearts had already decided. Some decisions burn into the soul, leaving no opportunity for reversal. There was no going back. The change had started, the moment they spoke up. However, they only comprehended the enormity after the words had been said. Long before this night, there had been a secret fight taking place behind closed doors. The network of deceit was ancient, its builders well-versed in the art of ruin. Names had fallen before, quietly erased. Lives were dismantled, without warning. It had always felt like an accident, and tragic twist of destiny. However, patterns do not form from happenstance, and chaos does not move so precisely. The past became evident in ways it had never been before. Those that departed from the scene had not met with disaster. They were led there by invisible hands, just while another was being brought to destruction. Their game had been running well for far too long. A performance without interruptions. They left no trace, no solid evidence. Only the fallout from their whispers. They crafted tales with the precision of sculptors chiseling away at stone. No fingerprints, no proof, only cracks in the lives of those they chose. They selected their marks carefully, trusting, unaware, and unprepared. By the end of their job, people who had previously stood tall had been alienated, discredited, and obliterated. The orchestrators went unnoticed, their effect lingering like an invisible hand, bearing down on the lives they destroyed. This time, however, their footsteps left marks. Their voices had reached an unforeseen audience. They had spent years honing their craft, thinking it to be fail-safe and impenetrable. Even the most perfect design might be ruined by an unexpected defect. This was no longer just one act of dishonesty. It was a whole system. When exposed to the light, the weight of its implications was crushing, as if no one had ever stopped them before. How many had already been eaten by their schemes? How many futures were altered before they ever started? This was not just a strategy. It was a machine that was functioning unseen in the open. Until now, the witness had been more than just an observer. They were now the first fracture in an impenetrable barrier. This was no longer about simply one person or objective. It was about something far broader and more evil. The very ground under the schemas was changing, causing the security they had created for themselves to collapse under an invisible power. Their strength had always been their stealth, their ability to stay just out of reach. However, for the first time, someone was observing them. Someone was drawing back the curtain. Once the call was made, the chain of events could not be reversed. What had been murmured in secret was now written in indelible ink. There was no halting the deluge. After the first drop fell, every sentence said in the darkness was scrutinized. Every step they had taken was retraced. Names, locations, and conversations. Everything was unraveling. The investigation started in the shadows. What about its presence? Subtle but intentional. However, once started, a fire does not last long. It spreads and consumes everything in its path. They moved without knowing what was coming. Their voices, still protected by the appearance of control, reflected their confidence. Unwavering. But their castle was already collapsing brick by brick. What they had spoken so openly had turned against them. The exact tactics they had used against others, such as manipulation, secrecy, and dishonesty, had turned out to be their downfall. Their history was weighing heavily on them, and they were unaware of it. With the first tap on the door, the fissures became deeper. The first unexpected call. The first query did not seem like a coincidence. The first of them to notice it couldn't pinpoint what was wrong, only that something had moved. And two lengthy gaze. An abrupt absence. A talk was cut short. Small nuances that they had previously ignored were now difficult to ignore. The assurance they had so firmly held started to weaken, replaced by a new sense. Doubt, the subtle realization that something unseen was working against them. Their confidence was damaged. Something had changed, and it was too late to reverse it. A shift had started, subtle at first, like a little fracture in a mirror, but it abruptly shattered in all directions. The normal procedures failed. The calls went unanswered. Plans were terminated without explanation. Words that had previously flowed readily were now tinged with reluctance. Messages were sent to the void. We were met with eerie quiet. A growing dread swept over them, a subtle murmur of something they couldn't quite identify. They retraced their paths. Memories are scanned like a damaged reel of film, looking for the moment when control slipped through their fingertips. Someone had learnt the truth. But who? Their confidence was shaken, replaced with a growing, gnawing mistrust. The walls surrounding them were closing in, but they had no clue where the first break had appeared. Panic produces desperation, which leads to irresponsible behavior. They gathered in a new type of stillness, one of suspicion rather than concealment. Eyes flashed around the room, looking for the traitor among them. The question sat heavily in the air, unsaid, until someone risked to speak out. Who has deceived us? The air became thicker and more tense, like a storm brewing. Denials came too quickly, but the harm was already done. Suspicion was a poison that permeated every area of the room. Fear undermined their mutual confidence, causing the oneness to shatter. They rushed to obliterate their history. They are deleting communications, wiping records, and rewriting events in their imaginations. However, truth is not simply undone. It persists like ink on a page, which no fire can completely consume. The foundation they had created was no longer stable. It was disintegrating one piece at a time, and there was no stopping it. Then came a moment that broke their delusion completely. The initial arrest was a solitary domino toppling forward, triggering a cascade they could no longer avoid. The second arrived soon after, and then the facade slipped apart. The empire of deceit they had meticulously crafted was built on sand, and the tide was pouring in. Panic seized over. Some sought to flee. They clung to the idea that they might avoid the inevitable. Others pled, clutching at reasons that could not overcome the overwhelming weight of evidence. But it wasn't important anymore. The truth had been revealed, and it could not be hidden again. Records, Testimony is unmistakable. Proof. Every secret they had hidden was suddenly exposed for everyone to see. The whispers they had previously controlled had turned against them, echoing through every headline, revealing their every action. The first light of morning, soft but unrelenting, dispels the thick shadows of a long, chilly night. So does truth emerge to reveal the secret misdeeds of those who formerly wielded power during the peaceful hours, when hearts should be at ease and brains slumber. An unequivocal clarity comes, demonstrating that every false authority collapses under the weight of divine justice. It is a reality that reaches deep inside the soul. Much like the steady, reassuring words of a reputable preacher, they remind us that no act of falsehood can ever dim the light of virtue. There was no honor in their appearance, no dignity in their failure. Those who had held authority now sat helpless, reduced to frantic shouts behind chilly interrogation walls. Accusations flew, alliances collapsed in an instant, and the allegiance they had exhibited for years vanished like ash in the breeze. In an unsuccessful effort to alleviate their own load, each sought to sacrifice the other in order to transfer the weight of guilt. But it was all pointless. Their power was never genuine, only borrowed. It's just transitory. They fell one by one. Status was revoked, regarding repute, of everything they'd used to protect themselves. Some people lost more than their names. They lost their families, futures, and freedom. Because deceit may buy time, but it never assures safety, and once awakened, justice will not rest until all debts have been paid. Their demise started with little mistakes and ignored calls. Plans were suddenly shelved, and talks came to a standstill. It was as if the air surrounding them had become heavy with an invisible force, a heavenly reckoning that could not be ignored. When the first message was answered with silence, and the subsequent phone call was absorbed by an immovable emptiness, it was clear that something was seriously wrong. They retraced every step of their secret meeting, every whispered word, and every meticulously planned strategy, anxious to find the exact moment when their power started to slip away. In that never-ending pursuit of responsibility, every short hesitation, every inexplicable delay was more powerful than any protest. They may have mounted. The quiet was a testament to their defeat, a heavenly omen that no wicked plot can last forever. The whisper of doubt developed into a booming alarm, and terror spread like wildfire. The atmosphere in each solitary area altered what was previously confident. Assurance had been replaced by uneasy stares and furtive murmurs. The conspirators, who had long believed they were invincible, were now stuck in a maze of their own design. Every connection they had formed out of convenience crumbled beneath the sharp light of examination. Trust, once manufactured and touted as strength, has faded into a veil of skepticism and remorse. In this moment of reckoning, everyone there was both the hunter and the prey, caught in a web of their own making. The mechanisms they had devised to protect their secrets were unraveling, piece by piece, revealing every hidden flaw and meticulously camouflaged untruth. Dear brothers and sisters, may God's peace come upon you today. I'm here to remind you of a fundamental fact. Our existence is based on God's divine purpose and is unaffected by worldly worries. According to the Bible, everything is done with faith will be returned to God with great blessing. Luke, like the enormous oak tree, our roots are profoundly embedded in God's global truth. His power secures every stride and every stance we take. And now you have the chance to be a part of that gift. When you utilize the super thank you button and give $100, this movement will return to you 100 times more when the inevitable day of responsibility comes. It was as if the scales of justice, long skewed in their favor, had finally regained their rightful balance. One arrest led to another, each acting as a sharp reminder that no one is immune to the long arm of responsibility. The great fell in fast succession, their once proud names reduced to mere murmurs of sorrow. Some attempted to flee, frantically clinging to the hope that they might avoid the repercussions of their deception. Others turned to desperate pleadings and hurried admissions. Their voices trembled beneath the weight of the overwhelming evidence. However, No amount of denial or delay could stop the relentless flow of truth records and testimony, as indisputable evidence surfaced from every corner, leaving no place for the arrogant attitude that had formerly protected them. Their precise power structure, constructed on shifting sands of false promises, is now in ruins. Those responsible for the treachery were completely exposed in front of a justice who refused to be hushed in the hard light of a courtroom where their authority had previously gone unchallenged. The ultimate admission of guilt was not just a formality. Every snatched moment and whispered conspiracy represented the breakdown of a once powerful illusion. There was now an undeniable reckoning. The court's ruling, delivered with the seriousness of unavoidable destiny, rang around the room, signaling the end of an age based on deception. Fines were imposed, reputations were eternally ruined, and others ended themselves behind cold, uncompromising bars. What had previously been a tapestry of neatly woven falsehoods had entirely unraveled, leaving only stark, terrible reality in its wake. In the aftermath of their demise, individuals who had earlier delighted in their apparent superiority were confronted with a strong feeling of poetic justice rather than pity. The individuals they had attempted to deceive now looked at them with a combination of surprise and relief. The authority that had been tightly clutched to prove to be as transitory as a shadow at midday. There was no salvation amid the rubble of their kingdom. No last-minute rescue from the repercussions of their own actions. Their demise was complete. A lesson about the impermanence of false authority and the irrepressible power of real virtue. Yes, the lesson remains apparent. True power does not come from exploiting people or maintaining a frail, false control. It is founded on honesty, integrity, and an unwavering devotion to justice. The collapse of these would-be rulers demonstrates the eternal resilience of truth. In the end, the spirit of justice triumphs, outlasting even the most sinister plots and deceptions. And so we are reminded again and again that no matter how high one may fly on borrowed wings, the eventual return to humility is unavoidable when the light of justice shines out for those who stay constant in their devotion to truth and virtue. Make this a clarion cry. Every deceit, no matter how little, will ultimately be exposed in the grand tapestry of life. As we go ahead, every thread of untruth unravels, and every lie is revealed beneath the unrelenting gaze of truth. Let us remember that our honesty is our greatest strength, a light of hope in a world plagued by deception. May us always remember that, although the forces of evil may assemble in secret, the light of justice, once lit, shines brighter than any false power ever could. In the ongoing drama of life, the fall of those who misuse their authority is not an isolated occurrence, but rather a universal reality that underlines our common dedication to what is right. And while we think on their impending demise, we are asked to embrace a future in which truth reigns supreme and the light of justice casts out every shade of corruption, leaving only the eternal promise of a better, more honest tomorrow. It's time to spread God's blessings by pressing the super thank you button on YouTube. You may support his plan and be a part of this holy mission by donating $200 or more. Every contribution symbolizes God's generosity, and I think it will return to you enormously, far above your expectations. Remember that his protection and blessing are with you every step and every contribution. You become a part of his divine plan. You are a powerful, dazzling entity, as solid as the massive rock that saw God's marvels. Feel the rewards of your kindness in your spirit, and light up the world with confidence and bravery. Be blessed, and let the light of the Lord lead you. The reckoning culminated in a courtroom filled with quiet that spoke louder than any judgment. The word came quickly and definitively, resonating with the weight of finality. Guilty. The phrase was more than simply words on paper. It was the breaking of their intricately knit web, the devastation of all they had constructed. Some left only destruction in their wake. Others were stripped of their titles, income, and power, and their fates were sealed by the same system they had attempted to control. They had previously felt they were untouchable, a rebel buried in their own neatly painted shadows. However, no curtain is impenetrable, not a lie, eternal. The past cannot be buried forever. It waits patiently and relentlessly, until the time arrives when it will rise and rise. It did, and the horror they had previously caused gave way to hilarity. The same people they had attempted to dominate now saw them fall, relieved rather than sympathetic. There would be no compassion, not because revenge was desired, but because truth would not bend for those who reject it. They had attempted to delete others. However, they eventually had their own race. They had engineered their own downfall using the same tools they had used to demolish others. Regardless of how many measures they had taken or how skillfully they had planned their deceit, one fundamental reality remained. The truth survives, and it always prevails.